Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast, elevating your impact through valuable insights and conversations about leadership. Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast. Today we have Charlie Sells with us, and you might all think that Charlie's going to tell us about selling, and well, maybe he'll talk a little bit about that, but Charlie's actually the founder of Clarity Over Everything, and I'm going to let Charlie tell you a little bit about what that is and how he got to where he is today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Amos. I'll tell you what, my entire life, people have said, are you in sales? And my answer has been vehemently no until I became a founder. And now that's, 90% of what I do is having conversations and trying to convince people that they need some of what I've got. So, but yeah, my dad was in sales for a long time. He was in traditional radio sales for 30 years. I grew up around it, but I had a little bit too much of a creative marketer bone in me to go into cold calling and whatnot. Yeah. But the way I even got started out from an early age, I've always loved communicating ideas and always been comfortable on stage, speaking and performing and doing all that. Discovered marketing in high school. I went to a very great high school that had an entire business track, a business wing. And so from there, went to school for marketing and got a minor in logistics as well. And then I became a youth pastor for 10 years because I graduated into an economy that was not good. But what you discover really quickly is that in a ministry context, if you're the only person with a business degree, you get to do all of the stuff that nobody else wants to do. So I was doing websites and newsletters and social media, early days of organic social media for the churches that I worked for. I worked for 3 churches around the South. And then when I landed in Nashville and decided to wrap up my time in full-time ministry, I got back into the marketing world thanks to a couple of friends who helped me build a little bit of a portfolio, and then went and worked for a guy that you may have heard of. His name's Dave Ramsey. Worked at his company for about 4 years in a couple of their marketing teams. Got hired on by a little startup agency, and like a lot of startups, 9 months later, we needed to change course and change structure. And so that was the time I said, if I'm ever going to go out on my own, now is the time. And so now I do brand positioning and marketing strategy. I help leaders and brands reduce confusion and complexity through better positioning and strategy so that they can be clear and aligned and know where to go next for their brand. And I can talk about that forever because that's absolutely what I love to do.
So I'm curious, before we jump into that, you said that, you've always been comfortable in front of people, talking, being on stage, all of those things. And I got to ask, because so many times people will say that they're uncomfortable doing those things. Mm-hmm. But although you might have been comfortable, were you as good at it 15 years ago, 20 years ago as you are today? Did you start out perfect?
No, not even close. We all learn to stumble and fumble through things. In fact, I would still tell you to this day, as much theater as I did, it took me forever to memorize lines. I got into like comedy improv, kind of whose line is it anyway stuff.
Yep.
Not the Michael Scott version. I want to make that very clear. But we were able to do some of the same kind of things. And that was way more my speed because it was, situational and all about chemistry and whatnot. But even to this day, like when I was a pastor, I was reading most of what I had written, in transcript form. I was still to this day, I'm not a great memorizer, but over time, I could even tell you the jump between my first year doing, my full-time career and my second year. That leap was huge in my comfort, in my delivery, in my content, and everything else. And so, yeah, thank goodness I'm not the same communicator that I was 15 and 20 years ago, because I don't know that I'd be doing what I'm doing now.
So the good news for everybody out there is no matter where you start, you can always get better, right? And I just think, because so many times what people that do this, and I'm many times on stage or in front of people, and they're like, I don't know how you do this. And I always tell people the same, like, the first time I did it, I sucked. The first podcast I did was not that great. Go back and listen to it. You get better over time, and you just got to get out there. Which I alluded to, by the time this airs, it will be a past episode. But Charlie Wetzel just said, the only way you can get good at something is by doing the reps. You don't get good by sitting on your couch. So
yep.
you talked about brand, and I'm curious, what are your thoughts? Does a brand, for a lack of better terms, when we're working with people in leadership, we often talk about having a mission, vision, values, and all those things. Mm-hmm. Should a brand be that clear as well? Like, should you be able to look at a brand and know exactly what it stands for? Or should a brand be confusing in like 50 different things, and it's one thing to 20-year-olds and one thing to 30-year-olds and another thing to 40-year-olds? Or is there one brand for social media and one brand for print newspaper and one brand for Golf Digest? Like, how, just in simple, because so many business owners, I think, struggle with this idea and sometimes just give up. Like, I don't have a brand. I'm not going there. I'm a plumber. I do plumbing, and if people want me, they'll call me. Mm-hmm. Is there a simpler way to look at it so that the general small business owner can understand, yes, this is what I should be doing?
Yeah, I think you've reminded me that I haven't really written down a solid definition of what branding is, at least from my seat at the table, because there is so much abstract, ethereal, like what exactly is this thing that we're chasing. I can tell you confidently that I don't necessarily think it is your mission, vision, values, although I believe those are important, because every company has to have a culture, every company has to have a direction and a starting point, and those things are important, but they are probably not the most important thing to your customers unless you have a social justice bend or some other kind of community mission that you want people to rally behind. But in that same vein, everything that you just mentioned as well, your website, your social media, your customer experience, your customer service, all of that is representative of your brand. And one of the things that I preach very strongly in my work with my clients is your brand has to be consistent everywhere. That is the thing that unifies your brand, that solidifies your position in the market. It builds trust with your customers. That trust can multiply over time. The worst thing that a brand could do is be inconsistent or be trendy, too trendy, I should say. You know, there are times where you can be clever. There are times where you can be creative. And yes, there are times where you should tap into a trend because it makes sense. But I think where a lot of brands get tripped up is feeling like we have to be innovative. We have to be viral. We have to keep up with the Coca-Colas and the Apples of the world. And that's just simply not true. One of my favorite client stories from this last year was a brand who decided we want to replicate our in-store experience in the digital space. Now, that did not mean we want to build an app. That did not mean we needed a better website. It just meant for them, we want to communicate to our customers like we would if they were to walk in the door. And wouldn't you know, they actually added about 10% to their bottom line just from some of their communication and marketing efforts. Now, you can make the case that, you know, they didn't have anything before and now is in place, but I still strongly and firmly believe that it was just because they were being consistent over anything else. They weren't trying to do fancy email marketing. They weren't trying to do the most sensational, videos. It was literally just telling customers what was happening, when it was happening, how they can be involved, what are the specials, and all of that. So, brand really does break down to very simple things. And I think, to your point, Amos, we've overcomplicated it a lot of ways too. We think that it always has to be tied to something, a KPI or a goal or something like that. And yes, those are important, but more than anything, a brand is really this barrel tight personification that goes out to your customers. Logo, email language, marketing, advertising, social media. It all just has to work in concert with one another. And if it doesn't, that's where the cracks really start to erode your brand from the inside out.
So, for me, I'm a small business, and we do a lot of different things. We do a podcast, which hopefully, there's 5,000 people listening right now. So then we promote the podcast, and then we also, might put on events, and maybe I decide, okay, I want to put a video out. And what I have found, you mentioned the word consistency. Is it more important that I just put a video out and don't worry about the quality? And I don't mean that it's like terrible. I mean, it's not perfect. Is it more important that I put a video out every Tuesday Or is it more important that I put out an unbelievably amazing video that's just perfect and spot on once a year? You know,
yeah, it's definitely the first one. I mean, I think so many brands, so many leaders are afraid to step into the arena because they want it to be perfect. They want it to be polished. They want it to be well produced. And all of those things are good. All of those things have a place probably in your ecosystem somewhere. But if that is continually holding you back from putting content out and getting in front of the right audience, that's where I would challenge you to maybe think differently. Gary Vaynerchuk is one of the marketing gurus of the world. And, he and several others have said, oh yeah, post like 10 times a day because you're going to hit, you're going to hit the nail on the head eventually. I don't know that I have enough content in me for 10 times a day. I barely have enough content in me for once a day, on certain weeks. But I think the point still stands that when you're consistent, I talk to my clients a lot about how to train and even retrain their audiences. If you've got an email list of 10,000 people and you have emailed them once a month or once a quarter, and you're like, now we want to do a weekly newsletter. Well, that's going to take some training, and that's going to take them getting used to this new rhythm. You're also going to have to be okay with the metrics looking different for a period of time. We want them to look better over time, obviously, but you sort of have to retrain your audience if it's owned to expect something different from you. But I would totally agree with you that I think just posting is being in the game, and you can't win the game if you're not playing. So you have to put something out there, and at some level, polished, unpolished, raw, authentic, whatever degree that looks like.
So next question in my mind, I'm a small business owner, I'm growing. And now it's time to get more serious about some of these things. So where do I go to find anything out at all about what I'm supposed to know so that I can hire you to help me get there? And where I'm really headed with this is I know many companies that hire marketing firms, spend six figures with them. And when we are sitting down and going through finances from a consulting standpoint, and I said, well, what are you getting for that? I don't know. I don't understand marketing. I don't understand, I have no idea. They just, these people in this department said we need them. So my real question is, what advice can you give to a business owner or an executive that is in that position? Where can they go to at least learn the bare minimum so that they understand what I'm getting for what I'm paying, and is it worth what I'm paying?
It's a great question. I wish there was just one answer to say, like, don't ever go talk to these people or go here for this nice, clean checklist. Unfortunately, I know every client is different. Every need is different. I can say, though, pretty confidently that there are, unfortunately, marketing agencies who are out there just to prey upon those needs. And I work really hard in my practice, in my business, my consulting, coaching, whatever you want to call it. I work really hard to meet a client exactly where they are. I make an intentional effort to not stop doing anything that they are already doing and works. And I make sure not to either prescribe or overprescribe next steps. I think most of the time, and I work with some wonderful agencies as a contractor, so please don't hear me knocking agencies, because there are some that are really doing it well. But there are others that will come in and they will slap a playbook down, or they will say, irrespective of your goals, here are all of the things that we believe you should do in order to move the needle. And to your point, you could look up and be spending 5 or 6 figures down the road and have seen maybe a little bit of improvement. Maybe you got a new website. Maybe you got some good social hits. Maybe you got a new logo or whatever it is. But I think that that's the play of just about every marketing agency, to feel like you have to have a new this, and this. So when a client comes to me, for example, and says, something is off, I feel stuck, something has stalled, we don't have as much momentum, I don't know where to start, I will usually ask the question, well, where do you think we should start? And 9 times out of 10, it's like, I should be doing social media. And I'll go, maybe. What happens after they engage with your social media? Where do they go next? Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Okay. Well, where do you want them to go? Oh, I'd love for them to go to a website. Great. What's on your website right now? Well, I hate my website. Okay, well, maybe we need to start there first. And then they go, I've been meaning to redo a logo. See, I've now discovered 3 different projects just by asking some questions when they thought it was just going to be, I need to do social media. Now we've got to start all over. I have clients like that all the time who are like, I don't want to change my website. I'm like, that's great. But just know that there may be some opportunities to tweak things. We don't have to build a brand new one, right? So, and then the next question is, what do you expect them to gain from whatever we do? Sometimes, literally, Amos, sometimes it is just being consistent that gives a business owner or a leader or a marketing director the peace of mind to go, now we can run harder because I'm not worried about plugging all of these other holes that are continually leaking out. I can unify my team around a goal. I can unify my team around a campaign or an objective, and we can go faster because we all have confidence that everything else in our ecosystem works and works well.
So there's somebody out there listening right now that says, man, Charlie, he really hit it. I got it. And they said, well, I don't want to pay Charlie, so I'm going to go to ChatGPT and I'm going to take everything that Charlie and Amos just talked about, and I'm going to plug it in and say, now give me a marketing game. What is the harm in that?
It's a good starting point. I would say, unless you have, and I do my very best to remain objective with every single client. If I start to feel like one of the team for too long, or I'm too close to the brand, I usually back off a little bit because I'm like, I don't know that I can be as effective in my role now because I don't just want to advocate for the things that we are constantly doing without having the vision to see other opportunities. So I don't think it's a bad starting point. The problem with some of these platforms is most of the prompts are not thorough, and most of the prompts are just going to give you collective knowledge or best practices or overviews and whatnot. You can manipulate it some ways with deep research and certain GPTs and in some of those things, but information will only get you so far, and data is really, really good. But data by itself should not be the gospel, and it definitely shouldn't be what you would call clarity. This is one of the things that I preach, very strongly, is that if you are certain about something, that is the path to brand erosion, because you're now not considering other options. You're not thinking about how your customers are feeling. The moment a leader says, "I'm so certain about this," that should be a red flag for you to go, "All right, hold on. What are we missing here? There's got to be other opportunities. There's got to be other things that we have to consider, because at minimum, you're going to validate the ideas that you're doing, right? At minimum, you're going to get validation and think, oh, we're on the right path. We're doing all the right things. There's not really much else we could do. But at best, you're going to discover new opportunities, and you're going to discover some of the gaps that are there. I fully believe that everybody should have some kind of consultancy or coaching when it comes to their brand and their marketing from an outside perspective, at least once a year, because I work in a variety of industries. I haven't niched down. It's a choice that I made very early on to not be all about retail, all about leadership, all about books or whatever it is. But that also makes me very valuable because I can come in and say, hey, you know what? I had this conversation with a client the other day. He said, what are some of the things that we should consider when it comes to this book launch? And I went, I can tell you all the things not to consider because I've seen this fail epically in a different arena altogether. So let's not do those things so that we can do these other things. That's the value of somebody who is not just a robot, not just spitting out results, of somebody who can actually look objectively and creatively at the whole picture and say, here's what I believe we could do. And now together, let's create a roadmap for where our brand could be 12 months from now.
And I think you hit on one thing there, and I recommend, not because I'm a coach as well, but I recommend that businesses get a coach in every department. Every aspect of your business, you should have a coach in, whether that's, like you said, once a year, once a month, once a week, whatever's needed. But coaches are available and they're out there. And in today's world, we can meet via Zoom or Teams meetings. And so you can get the very best that you can possibly find for your business. And I love the fact that you said as well, I mean, you may not be perfect for a concrete block plan, but there's somebody that is what I'm getting at. And,
Yep.
That's one of the most valuable things in the world, is just to understand and hear what other people have to say. So when I was getting ready for this, and I, was kind of reading down over and doing my homework, and, what came back to mind was this experience that I had early on where I was at an organization, and they had just hired some agency to come in and create them a style guide. And this style guide, obviously it had primary, secondary, tertiary colors and, all these things, which are, I won't deny that part can be important. But then it got into, like they even went into what language to use, how to say things, so on and so forth. And it got to the point where all of the marketing going out was very robotic. And we actually saw a downward trend because it wasn't connecting with people. So the other piece for all of the small business owners that are out there, or large businesses that maybe have never went down this road, how important is it before you even get into marketing that you understand who your customers are?
Oh, that's central. That's foundational. If you don't start there, then you might as well be saying I'm for everybody, and no product is for everybody. I think there's a book that I have on my shelf. We're in the process of moving, so forgive me. There's nothing behind me for me to point at. But there's a book called Anyone, Not Everyone. And I've just kind of skimmed it, but I love the premise that your product could be for anyone, but it's definitely not for everyone. And one of my favorite comedians of all time, named Pete Holmes, released a special a couple of years ago that said, "I'm not for everyone." And I think you're exactly right that a lot of consultants feel like, oh yeah, this leadership stuff is for anybody, or marketing fractional CMOs. Oh yeah, I could do this for anybody. Well, maybe, because sometimes that's not what they need. I have a client right now. We're figuring out online ordering for a take and go restaurant. And it's a lot of back and forth because I'm dealing with a point of sale system that has to talk to this thing, and everything has to look consistent, and there's different SKUs and pricing and everything else. You wouldn't look at that and say that has anything to do with branding. But what we're doing is we're building the foundation so that she can confidently walk into the next catering event or whatever it is and say, yep, go to my website, click on this, order there, and we're done. It's one of the things that I can do on top of, we're building her a website, and yes, we're working on a logo, and obviously we're continuing to do social media for her, but those aren't the most important things right now. And I think a lot of consultants think that they know what the most important thing is, therefore they get to prescribe it and they get to lay the playbook down. But sometimes when consultants come in and they lay a playbook down, it's like saying, hey, we gave you the map. Good luck crossing the swamp. See you later. And I just don't think that works anymore. The way that I've tried to describe, how I think it should work specifically in the branding and the marketing world is I think you should strive to be the Alfred to somebody else's Batman. I'm not trying to be the sidekick that's on the front lines doing all the things. I'm trying to be the person who has a little bit more knowledge and can ask better questions so that you can go out and do more of what you're good at and what you're called to do, especially if you're in a mission-driven or vision-centric organization.
So what would be your biggest piece of advice for the person that is listening to all this? They're consuming it and they're like, I have no idea what I've got to do. Like now I'm more overwhelmed than I was before I started. I was hoping to get on here and hear Charlie and Amos tell me there's one thing you need to do and that's it. And now Charlie has told me I need to think a little bit more. What's the first step? If you're stuck or you're getting started and you're not sure what to do, what is a good first step?
The very first thing you've got to do is you've got to get curious again. You got to get curious about your brand, about your marketing, about your business, about everything that is going on. Some might call that strategic planning or operational audits or whatever that looks like. But just from a leader's standpoint, you've got to get curious again. We've got to stop being certain. We've got to stop thinking that we have all the answers, or that we say it once and therefore everybody is now deputized to go out and do it. Rather than that, we need to look at data with fresh eyes. We've got to lean into doubts. We got to look at the places where we might be uncomfortable and lean into those, meaning, that may not be how we've always done it, but maybe this is the time to refresh that initiative. I think we've also got to listen to disagreements, listen to the voices who are saying, hey, I don't think this is the right thing for our brand. And that is not in an effort to pull things back. That is certainly not in an effort to hinder a leader's position or ability or vision or anything like that. Rather, it's a posture that will build your culture from the ground up. One of the things that I have talked about to all of my clients, and one of the things I'm preaching really hard right now is brand erosion really starts from the inside. It starts with people making leaders making poor decisions, not bad decisions, because those are going to happen, right? Quick, confident, this is how we've always done it kind of decisions. And from there, it just trickles down into morale and wasted time and duplicate work and missed opportunities and eventually lost customers and lost revenue. And if a leader will instead posture themselves to ask questions before answering or prescribing, it will actually trickle down in your organization. So if you're in a big team and you've got the brand new copywriter or designer on your team that is in the weeds and doing the work, or somebody who's in sales or customer service, go by and ask them, like, tell me what is working right now for our customers, and tell me what is not working right now for our customers, and what is the next thing that you would recommend us building. If you will posture yourself like that in a mentality of curiosity, that will do wonders for what you can do next, because the people who you're leading are going to experience that, but also they're going to come to you with more ideas, and they're going to follow up, and they're going to go, hey, I know I mentioned this to you. Does that fit in the roadmap right now? Hopefully they have that same kind of posture too, right?
Yep.
But curiosity is where it has to start. Before you can ever get to anything else, leaders have to take a breath and just go, what am I missing here?
So for the solopreneur that is out there doing everything on their own, I would assume, obviously, curiosity still works for them. But the reality is that many times, I'm even thinking about myself. You got Google Analytics and you got this, and then I have a CRM and it's connected to my social media, and it gives me, I don't look at half of what I probably should be looking at, because I'm one person and I'm going to go do the things that bring me money, right? Mm-hmm. So what is the biggest mistake, or what would be the one thing that you would tell a solopreneur or somebody that's just getting started out on their own? What's the biggest thing they can do to prepare? Because we all start a business hoping to grow it.
Sure.
So I guess there's kind of two ways to look at the question. What would be one thing that they could do out of the gate that will help them long term? Or secondly, is there one thing, that maybe they shouldn't do that could harm them in the long term? Whichever way you'd like to answer that, or both.
Yeah, I don't think it's wrong to start exactly where you are too. If you are bootstrapped and you've got a the Google Sheets version of a CRM or whatever, make it work for you for the time being. I think, and I'm a solopreneur myself. I've been doing this on my own, unofficially for about 10 years, but officially for about the last 2. And shiny object syndrome is real. The newest system, the latest whatever, and that's going to fix all of your problems and such. Some of them are great. What's the old phrase that all models are wrong and some of them are useful?
Yep.
I think that's probably the same thing when it comes to, our tech stacks and tools. Most of them are going to be, specific or niche, but some of them are going to be useful. I know people who use Notion like it is going out of style, and I'm like, I can't wrap my head around that. Or people who are like, QuickBooks is the way to go, and I'm like, I've been using the same, dinky little invoicing system, for 15 years, and I'm not going to move anywhere because that's where all my data is, right? I think that's part one is just taking a step back and going, I don't have to have it all, and I don't have to have it all figured out now. Man, I struggle with that as as somebody who is trying to be successful and, build the next thing and level up and all of that. But I heard somebody say years ago at a conference, do not compare your beginning to somebody else's middle. We unfortunately have a front row seat to everybody's success, everybody's phase 3 when we are barely on phase 1. And man, imposter syndrome can come out of nowhere and bite you in the neck if you're not careful. I would also say a thing that helped me run faster and have more confidence is finding a very, very niche community of people who do what I do. So I found a little small group of freelancers in a little circle community, and that kept me going last year, because there were times where I was like, I have a contract dispute with a client. How did you guys navigate this? And everybody would chime in, right? I think that's an important internal thing. I would say an external thing that a lot of solopreneurs should do that probably don't. Ask your clients, what do I do for you? This was an unlock for me about 6 months into my journey. Was I thought I was just going to be a one-man content and copywriting machine, and unprompted I asked my mix of clients, like, tell me what I do for you. And almost none of it was about content. It was all about strategy. It was about positioning. It was about solving problems. It was about being objective and helping them think through things. And I looked up and went, oh, okay, I'm not just a content strategist or a copywriter. I'm doing all of these other things too. So that shifted my mentality. I think a lot of solopreneurs are afraid to ask that because they're afraid that their value is going to diminish, or that it's going to communicate to a client that you're unconfident. But really, all you're asking for is feedback, the same way you would in an exit survey, in the same way you would if you put out a big old customer questionnaire, right? You're just getting it firsthand from your clients. So I gave no prep, by the way, in all of that. I was like, hey, can you tell me what I do for you? Like, if you were to describe it to, my next 3 referrals or people in your network, like, just describe what I do for you. And I mean, there's nothing better. It's number one, it's very humbling. And number two, it can also provide you as a professional and a solopreneur a lot of clarity around what you should do next, or what are some of the things you didn't realize you were doing and you should lean into more.
So just to clarify for our listeners, and I think what you said was so valuable. One, find yourself a community, somehow find yourself a community to be part of. Don't compare your phase 1 to someone else's phase 2 or phase 3. And I think that for everybody, I think is probably really big. There was a startup recently that I was working with, and they were consistently comparing themselves to somebody else in the same business, but they had been in business for 50 couple years. Like you can't compare yourself, and at the end of the day, they may get to that point quicker for various reasons, but still be cognizant of where you're at. And probably the community I'm just thinking about that, is probably the most valuable thing in the world. People that are going through what you're going through. When you're getting started out, you don't have any idea how to handle those disputes or how to handle a lawsuit or whatever the case may be. So finding people that have already went through it, mentors, look for mentors out there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So if people are listening and they're like, all right, I need to get a hold of Charlie. He's already sold me, pun intended. He sold me.
There you go.
How would they go about getting a hold of you? And, where are the best places to connect with you?
LinkedIn is always a great place. To my knowledge, I might be the only Charlie Sells on there. I certainly don't have numbers after my name on my URL, but Charlie Sells on LinkedIn. You can also go to Clarity Over Everything and ClarityOverEverything.com, and it lays out all of the different services that I provide. I had a new client not too long ago look at all of that and went, can you really do all of that? I said, well, not all at once, but yes, I can do all of it. I wouldn't put it on my website if I couldn't. Everything from being an advisor, a thinking partner, if you just need a call once a month, to, a full 1-year engagement to help somebody just act in a fractional marketing or creative director role, or even brand manager role, and everything in between. The thing that I'm talking about the most this year is my clarity and alignment sprints, where for 30 days, I will do an audit and then ask a trillion questions. We'll do a half or a full day session. And then at the end of that, you get a 90-day priority list of things that we have to either continue doing or start doing right away in order to move the needle. And then a 12-month roadmap that you can either keep me on for, and I'm happy to help implement it, or you can take it and it's ready-made for an agency to say, here's exactly what we want to accomplish. Help us build a plan around this.
Awesome. So we end every episode with kind of a few rapid fire questions. The first question is, throughout your career, what is the single best piece of advice that someone has given you?
Man, I'd have to think about that. I mean, it's my calling card is clarity over everything. I had a leader when I was at Ramsey Solutions, and their challenge to me was find a way to be so valuable that nobody can start a meeting without you in there. And I made a commitment at that moment. I was not going to do it based on my intelligence or based on how much I knew or how much experience that I had. I said, I just want to be the person who asked the best questions in the room. And from there, somebody said, hey, you're just driving for clarity over everything. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. And that became my mantra, my calling card, now my business.
I like
and
it.
To be book.
Yeah. So with that, what is your go-to book over the years that you have continually maybe went back to for good insight?
Oh man. The one that I'm enjoying, I can't tell you which one I keep going back to, because I think the proclivity would be to say like StoryBrand or Ogilvy, on advertising, because those are just they're great bedrocks for, a lot of the marketing world. The one I'm into right now is called, Lead Every Day. It is a thick book, but it might as well be the only leadership book that you should read, as far as practicality, decades of wisdom, et cetera. There's another one coming out that I can't talk about yet, that I have a client, and that's going to be the next one that I tout. But man, there's just so much that I keep going back to, and I'm like, oh, this could have been a pull quote. This could have been its own book, and all of that. So it's by two guys named Mark Miller and Randy Gravitt. And it's not just about leaders. It's about emerging leaders. It's about how you lead in your home. It covers all facets of life. It's a really great book.
Awesome. Next question. If we could magically get all of the school administrators across the world into one room and you had an opportunity to give them a piece of advice that might help to turn out a better, well-rounded, more prepared for life student, what would that one thing be?
Oh man, now you're going to get me in trouble, Amos. I'm married to an educator, so whatever I say is going to be wrong. I think administrators, I would say you can honestly do more good than you realize. And it's not just about discipline. It's not just about building teacher culture. It's about building student rapport. I've been very fortunate in my life to have some phenomenal principals that, at one point I would have said like, hey, I know I'm 18 and you're, 50, whatever, but we could hang out at some point. I think don't underestimate your influence that you can have on your students just by popping your head in for no other reason than to say hello. Because I think the stigmas around principals still kind of persists a little bit, that if the principal calls my name or shows up in my class, I'm in trouble. And it's probably just my own fear coming through, if I'm being honest. But I'm friends with a lot of great principals, and have been under a few as well. And I would just say that you have so much potential in front of you, shaping young minds. Don't waste that, even if it's just putting yourself in a dunk tank and letting kids have fun, after a fundraiser, or pulling a kid out of class for no other reason than to say, I saw you pick up that trash yesterday, and I wanted to let you know that I'm so proud of how you've embodied our core values.
I like it. Last question is, in today's ever-changing world of technology, all the apps, all the software, all the hardware, AI, all the stuff that's out there, what are you actually using in your business and in your life that you find most useful right now?
Big fan of all the Google products, maybe minus Gemini. I haven't really gone into it because I was an early ChatGPT adopter. I would say in that same vein, no matter which AI you choose to use, and again, I try to remain agnostic. I just have been using one for the longest time. Make sure your prompts are better and don't just do one-off chats. I think that was the trap that I fell into very early on was, just constantly creating something new and assuming it new. No, I've got one that I continue to go back to and say, hey, what did we talk about like 6 months ago? To be like, oh yeah, here's your LinkedIn strategy for the next 6 months or whatever it is. So, unfortunately, it's one of those things. I shouldn't say unfortunately, but it's not going anywhere, and you have to know how to harness it and use it. I love it for brainstorming. I especially love to feed it different personalities and say, like, if my board of directors was made up of Jeff Bezos and Brene Brown and Henry Cloud, then how should I approach this product? How should I set goals? How should I do X, Y, Z? That's been a fun little thought exercise for me. And again, I don't take it as gospel truth, but it is fun directionally to think a little differently about how I do what I do.
I like it. Well, Charlie, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with our audience. I've had fun. Hopefully, maybe we'll get you back on again when maybe ahead of your book coming out or timed with that happening. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Amos. I appreciate it.
And for our listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to check out our past episodes, and don't forget to give us 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening so that you get alerts whenever the new episodes come out each week. Until next time, we appreciate all of our listeners.